Get ready to hear scary stories about horror at school. If you are a student, be aware and take care. Subscribe to the channel to receive more scary stories. My name is Carl, and I'm a senior in high school, navigating the trials and tribulations of adolescence in the sprawling hallways of St. Andrew's High. But there was one day, one singular event, that etched itself into the very fabric of my existence, casting a shadow over my youthful innocence and forever altering the course of my life. It was a crisp autumn morning, the kind that promises a day of endless possibilities. As I made my way to school, the usual chatter and laughter of my fellow students were replaced by a nervous energy, a palpable sense of unease that hung heavy in the air. And then, as if on cue, the intercom crackled to life, the principal's voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "Attention all students and staff," he said, his tone grave and solemn. "We are initiating a lockdown due to a security threat. Please proceed to your designated safe zones immediately." At the time, I remember feeling a sense of confusion and apprehension. What could possibly threaten the safety of our beloved school? Little did I know, as I made my way to my designated classroom and locked the door behind me, that I was about to come face to face with a terror beyond my wildest nightmares. That morning, as I stepped through the school doors, I could sense a shift in the atmosphere, a palpable tension that hung heavy in the air like a suffocating blanket. Teachers hurried past, their faces drawn and serious, ushering us into classrooms with urgent gestures and hushed instructions. The usual buzz of chatter and laughter was conspicuously absent, replaced by a tense silence that seemed to press down on us from all sides. As we settled into our seats, the gravity of the situation became increasingly apparent. The teachers' expressions were grim, their eyes filled with a sense of urgency that sent shivers down my spine. Without a word, they began to instruct us on what to do in the event of a lockdown, a procedure that had been drilled into us countless times before, but somehow felt more real, more ominous, in this moment of heightened tension. The sound of locks clicking shut reverberated through the empty hallways, each click a stark reminder of the danger that lurked just beyond the classroom door. With trembling hands, we followed our teacher's instructions, locking the doors and drawing the blinds in a desperate bid to keep out whatever unseen threat loomed on the other side. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered ominously, casting long shadows that seemed to dance with malicious intent. Anxiety coursed through my veins like a poison, twisting and coiling around my heart with icy fingers. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant sound from the hallway, sent my pulse racing in terror. I could feel the fear in the air, thick and suffocating, pressing down on me like a weight that threatened to crush me under its relentless pressure. And so, we waited, in silence, in darkness, in fear, for the inevitable, our hearts pounding in our chests like drums heralding the approach of some unseen menace. Little did we know, as the minutes stretched into hours, that the true horror was yet to come. The silence that followed the lockdown announcement was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It was as if the very air had been sucked out of the room, leaving behind a vacuum of sound so profound that it felt almost suffocating. Gone were the usual sounds of laughter and chatter that filled the classroom, replaced instead by the thunderous cacophony of our own racing hearts. Each beat of my heart reverberated off the walls of the classroom, a steady rhythm of fear that seemed to grow louder with each passing moment. It was as if the silence itself had taken on a malevolent life of its own, wrapping around us like a vice and squeezing the air from our lungs. I glanced around the room, meeting the wide-eyed stares of my classmates, each one a mirror of my own mounting terror. Time seemed to warp and distort in the stillness, stretching out into an endless expanse of uncertainty. Seconds stretched into minutes, minutes into hours, each one dragging by with excruciating slowness. We were suspended in a liminal space, trapped between the oppressive weight of the present and the uncertain promise of the future. Every sound, no matter how small, sent a jolt of adrenaline coursing through my veins. The creak of a floorboard, the rustle of papers in the breeze, each one a potential harbinger of the danger that lurked beyond the confines of our classroom. I held my breath, straining to hear any sign of what was happening outside, but all I could hear was the pounding of my own heart, a constant reminder of the fear that gripped us all. And then, as if summoned by the darkness itself, we heard it. A soft, almost imperceptible scratch, like nails on a chalkboard, followed by the ominous creak of a door slowly swinging open. Every muscle in our bodies tensed instinctively, as if preparing for the inevitable confrontation that lurked just beyond the threshold. All eyes turned to the entrance of the room, drawn like moths to a flame, our breaths held in terrified anticipation. The dim light filtering through the cracks in the blinds cast eerie shadows across the floor, amplifying the sense of dread that hung thick in the air. And then he appeared. A figure shrouded in darkness, his features obscured by the cloak of night, yet his presence palpable in the suffocating silence of the room. As he drew closer, the details of his appearance became clearer. A gaunt face, hollow cheeks, and eyes that burned with a feverish intensity. His lips curled into a twisted smirk, revealing a row of jagged teeth that seemed to glint in the dim light. It was a sight that sent a shiver down my spine, a primal instinct warning me of the danger that lurked within the shadows. Chaos engulfed us like a tidal wave, a maelstrom of fear and panic that threatened to consume us whole. Desperation clawed at our chests as we scrambled to defend ourselves against the unseen intruder. Tables were overturned in a frenzy of motion, their splintered remains strewn across the classroom floor like the aftermath of a storm. Screams pierced the air, a cacophony of terror that reverberated through the hallways like a siren's wail. Each cry for help was met with an answering chorus of dread, a collective expression of the horror that gripped us all. And yet, even as fear threatened to overwhelm us, we clung to the faint flicker of hope that burned within our hearts. With every fiber of our beings, we fought against the encroaching darkness, our bodies battered and bruised, but our spirits unbroken. Every moment was a battle for survival, a desperate struggle against an enemy that seemed to lurk in every shadow. But still, we refused to surrender, drawing strength from the bonds of friendship and the resilience of the human spirit. After what felt like an eternity of terror and agony, the distant sound of sirens broke through the oppressive silence, signaling the arrival of the police. As they swept through the halls, their authoritative presence brought a semblance of order to the chaos that had consumed us. With cautious steps, we emerged from our classrooms, blinking against the harsh light of reality after hours of darkness. The school, once a bastion of safety, now bore the scars of the ordeal, its halls echoing with the remnants of fear and uncertainty. Though the physical wounds would heal with time, the emotional toll of that day would linger indefinitely. The memory of our school's breach of security served as a grim reminder of the fragility of our existence, casting a shadow over our once innocent lives. My name is Emily, and I'm a junior at Ridgewood High. What started as an ordinary Wednesday quickly turned into a day that would scar us all forever. The day began like any other. I walked into school, greeted by the usual hustle and bustle. Students chatted in the hallways, lockers clanged open and shut, and the morning announcements blared over the intercom. I headed to my first period algebra class, where we were about to tackle a new set of equations. As I settled into my seat, the familiar surroundings gave me a sense of routine. The classroom was filled with the murmurs of classmates catching up on last night's homework and making weekend plans. The sunlight filtered through the windows, casting a warm glow over the room. Everything seemed normal, the start of another ordinary school day. Out of nowhere, the intercom crackled to life with a sharp, jarring beep that silenced the room. The principal's voice came through, shaky and strained, a tone we'd never heard from him before. "Attention, all students and staff," he began, his words hanging heavy in the air. "We are now in lockdown. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. Lock your doors and remain silent." A collective gasp rippled through the classroom. The usual hum of chatter and laughter was replaced by an eerie, tense silence. Mr. Daniels, our teacher, sprang into action, quickly locking the door and turning off the lights. The room plunged into darkness, broken only by the dim light filtering through the blinds. We could hear the faint echoes of hurried footsteps and doors slamming shut throughout the school. The reality of the situation sank in, and a palpable sense of fear settled over us. A wave of panic washed over us like a cold, suffocating fog. Our teacher, Mr. Daniels, his face pale and tense, sprang into action. He rushed to the door, his hands shaking slightly as he turned the lock with a loud click that seemed to echo ominously in the sudden silence. The overhead lights flickered off, plunging the room into an unsettling semi-darkness, broken only by the faint glow of daylight seeping through the drawn blinds. "Move to the back of the room and stay quiet," he whispered urgently, his voice barely above a breath. We scrambled to comply, the sounds of shuffling feet and rustling backpacks amplifying the tension. We huddled together in the furthest corner, trying to make ourselves as small and invisible as possible. The room fell into an eerie silence, punctuated only by the muffled whimpers and quickened breaths of my classmates. Every creak of the building, every distant noise from the hallway, seemed amplified, sending shivers down our spines as we waited in terrified anticipation. Minutes turned into an agonizing eternity. Footsteps echoed down the hallway, slow and deliberate, each step a harbinger of dread. We held our breath, straining to hear any hint of what was happening outside. A door creaked open somewhere nearby, the sound piercing the silence like a knife. Then we heard it, a low, guttural voice muttering something unintelligible. The tone was menacing, dripping with malice, and it made our blood run cold. We exchanged terrified glances, our eyes wide with fear. It was clear that someone or something was searching for us. The voice grew louder, accompanied by the sound of heavy boots methodically moving from door to door. Every second felt like an eternity, the tension so thick it was almost suffocating. The muffled sobs of a few classmates added to the sense of impending doom, making it almost unbearable. Peeking through the small window in the door, I saw him. A tall figure dressed in dark, tactical clothing, with a menacing presence that made my blood run cold. He carried a rifle, its barrel glinting ominously in the dim light. He moved with a chilling calmness, checking each door, his gaze intense and unwavering. Our teacher signaled for us to stay quiet and began to whisper a plan. The only viable escape route was through the windows at the back of the classroom, but we were on the second floor. The drop was daunting, but the alternative was far worse. We agreed that if he got into the room, we'd have to make a run for it. The intruder reached our door. He tested the handle, and when it didn't budge, he began to pound on the door, each hit more forceful than the last. The door shook under the assault, the hinges groaning in protest. We had seconds to act. Mr. Daniels motioned for us to go, and one by one, we started climbing out the window. I was one of the last to go. The cold metal of the window frame bit into my palms as I swung myself over the edge. The ground seemed so far away, but the terror inside pushed me to let go. I landed hard, my legs buckling under the impact, but adrenaline kept me moving. We ran as fast as we could toward the nearby trees, seeking cover. I was one of the last to go. The cold metal of the window frame bit into my palms as I swung myself over the edge. The ground seemed so far away, but the terror inside pushed me to let go. I landed hard, my legs buckling under the impact, but adrenaline kept me moving. We ran as fast as we could toward the nearby trees, seeking cover. From the safety of the woods, we watched as police cars surrounded the school, their lights flashing in a chaotic dance of red and blue. The intruder's reign of terror ended as swiftly as it began, but the damage was done. We were safe, but the fear and anxiety of that day lingered, an invisible weight we carried with us. In the weeks that followed, Ridgewood High tried to return to normal, but the shadow of that day loomed large. The sound of the intercom, the sight of dark clothing, the feel of the cold window frame, all of it haunted my dreams. We survived, but we were forever changed, our innocence shattered by the reality of violence in a place we once felt safe.